Tonight, breaking news as we come on the air. The winter storm warning's up right now. The third major storm of the week set to hit the Midwest and the Northeast tonight and tomorrow. 100 million Americans on alert for heavy snow, ice, flooding in the next 24 hours, bringing treacherous conditions in the West already. A firefighter trapped in his vehicle wiped off the road in a mudslide. How he survived. The storm moving east right now. Some areas more than a foot of snow, ready to hit many of the same areas already hit this week. At this hour, there are also tornado concerns. The storm sweeping from Minneapolis to Detroit, from Pittsburgh up through New York City. Millions bracing. Lee Goldberg has the forecast. He's tracking it all. Also tonight, thousands of American workers laid off at multiple federal agencies tonight, including the Department of Education, the CDC, Veterans Affairs, and tonight, ABC News learning hundreds were laid off at the National Nuclear Security Administration, the agency that maintains America's nuclear stockpile. Then multiple sources telling us today they were called back, told their firings were on hold. So where this stands tonight, in New York City, anger over the Department of Justice pushing for the case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams to be dropped. Tonight, calls from some for Mayor Adams to resign. At least 7 federal prosecutors now quitting instead of going along with the DOJ on this. One prosecutor who quit saying this move by the DOJ would only be carried out by a fool or a coward. We have new reporting tonight of the plane crash over the Potomac, the collision with a Black Hawk helicopter, what we've now learned about that night. Tonight, Vice President J.D. Vance oversees his speech to America's allies, telling them the biggest threat isn't Russia, it's from within. The VP also meeting with Ukraine's President Zelensky. Tonight, Pope Francis has now been hospitalized amid his worsening condition this week. James Longman is live at the Vatican for us. Back here in the U.S. tonight, the daring rescue. A teenage boy trapped about 50 feet underground. You will see how they got him out. Tonight, the new CDC numbers just in when it comes to the flu in the U.S. Record levels and where. And the community tonight where cases of the measles have doubled since just Tuesday. And on this Valentine's, the Super Bowl champs feeling the love in Philly. But the Eagles general manager hit with a beer can, a cut to his head. But as you can see, the party goes on. From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir. Good evening. We finally made it to Friday, but we do have...
Tonight, the Justice Department revolt over a corruption case involving New York's mayor. 7 top prosecutors resign. Their pointed words as the Trump Justice Department orders them to drop the case. One lawyer saying they were set to bring new charges. The dramatic promise Trump's border czar made on live TV about what would happen to Mayor Eric Adams if he didn't keep his word. Sweeping government layoffs hit thousands of federal workers, including staff overseeing the nuclear stockpile. The president warning more cuts are coming. Torrential rains triggering mudslides in Southern California, sweeping a car into the ocean with the driver still inside. Plus, the major winter storm threatening millions. New developments in that deadly mid-air collision. The Black Hawk helicopter was flying too high, but the pilots might not have known it. The breaking news about the high-profile lawsuit against music mogul Jay-Z. Ukraine on edge after a dramatic drone strike at the Chernobyl nuclear plant. And world leaders stunned by mixed messages from the U.S. over the war. As President Zelensky tells us in an exclusive interview, they have a low chance of surviving without U.S. support.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt. From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News.
Good evening, I'm John Dickerson. If you check the Justice Department's website, as we did today, you will find at the top of the mission statement the words, "to uphold the rule of law."
I'm Maurice Dubois, and on that same website, under the heading Our Values, you will see independence and impartiality.
But after yet another federal prosecutor resigned in protest today, is the department, under the influence of President Trump, living up to its mission or its values?
7 U.S. prosecutors have now quit rather than follow orders from Trump allies in the department to drop criminal charges against New York City's mayor, Eric Adams.
But the implications of this go far beyond the Adams case. They go to the integrity of the justice system throughout the country. We begin tonight with Justice correspondent Scott McFarland. Scott?
A day of absolute turmoil inside the Department of Justice amid these concerns about efforts to dismiss the case against Mayor Adams, who pleaded not guilty to trading official government actions for gifts and travel. But the concerns are spreading into concerns that prosecutors in communities big and small could be on a short leash and under the president's thumb.
Well, listen to this. Speaking of not laying hens, but laying people off.
or hangovers that are not going to go away.
That's right. Well, Doge this week is laying off, get this, 3,600 probationary employees, 4,000 employees retained, and so then the savings is $600 million. So I guess a probationary doesn't mean they're on probation. It means that they were just recently hired and they're during this probationary period, which makes it easier for Doge and the government to let go of them if they decide that their jobs are not necessary.
Well, and this is a guy with Elon Musk. We saw when he took over Twitter, I mean, he slashed a lot of the employees. It's still running just fine. But the biggest problem where we are right now as a country with our federal government, it's too big. This is not the original vision of America. We were supposed to have a decentralized government. That was the whole vision of the founding fathers. So what we have now is the antithesis of what America is supposed to be. And when government becomes so centralized and so big, it becomes corrupt. Correct. And that's what we're seeing. And that's what we saw with the Biden administration going after people under the FACE Act, going after its political opponents without fear. And so what this election is about is the American people taking their power back. It's a we the people election, and we're seeing a we the people administration.
I think probably one of the most shocking things have been the things that we saw happening at USAID, which, by the way, we're going to have Glenn Greenwald on tomorrow, and we're going to talk about that. Who knew that so much money was being spent on? I mean, we knew there was regime change operations going on, but they were to the tune of billions and billions and billions of dollars doing the work of the CIA through USAID, and nobody really, it was very opaque. Nobody knew what was going on. It also was going to NGOs, and we saw Hillary Clinton's daughter receiving a lot of money. There was a lot of things that have come up, and I think the American people, and you see the polling, are on board with this. It's hard to believe that these Democrats think they can sing their way out of this, because
Ukraine's plea for peace this Friday night.
We need real security guarantees.
What President Zelensky says needs to happen before he negotiates with Russia's president. Canadians avoiding America.
I have travel planned but none to the U.S.
The ramifications of an increasingly complicated relationship between two neighbors. Frighteningly close call. The man briefly gulped up by a whale. And
Love sticks.
If you have a relationship you'd like to throw in the trash, you can donate some money.
a way to dump your anger, help cats, and get revenge on your ex.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Carolyn Jarvis.
Rising floodwaters in WA's Pilbara region as ex-tropical cyclone Zelia moves inland. Three Israeli hostages are released in Gaza in exchange for 369 Palestinian prisoners and detainees freed by Israel. A man in a serious condition after being shot by police in New South Wales Hunter region. And tennis world number one Yannick Sinner accepts a 3-month doping ban. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Mariam Saab.
Good afternoon, hello and welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akwir. It's just 4 o'clock. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Well, joining me for the next few hours, co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani, and also political commentator Lynn May. Coming up in my niggle, I take on Rachel Reeves, following reports that she was investigated over her expenses whilst working for a bank. Of course, every time I hear lots of questions, they come up with the fixing the foundations baloney.
Change our plan, not changing the conversation. Change and reform are coming. Fixing the foundations.
That's why we are fixing the foundations to better support our public finances. At my first budget in October, it was my duty as Chancellor to fix the foundations of our economy.
So is it time for Rachel to go? Meanwhile, Foreign Secretary David Lammy, here's another one, has been European countries to do more to smash the people smuggling gangs as he meets counterparts at the Munich Security Conference. So I'm asking, do you trust Labour to smash the gangs? Well, if you've got an answer to that one, you can head over to the GB News website, gbnews.com, cast your vote in my poll. And US Vice President JD Vance has blasted the UK and Europe over protest laws and immigration policies.
And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values shared with the United States of America. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
So is he right? Do you believe that there is a retreat of free speech in Britain? But before all of that, let's get your latest news with Sophia Wensler.
Nana, thank you. It's just gone 4 o'clock. These are your headlines. The Foreign Secretary has urged Ukraine to seek closer business and trade ties with Donald Trump's US to guarantee its future security. David Lammy made the comments at the second day of the Munich Security Conference, with world leaders including Olaf Scholz and Volodymyr Zelensky discussing global security challenges. UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy also called for European sanctions on people smuggling gangs and will co-host a migration roundtable with Italy. He also says he and US Vice President JD Vance agree Ukraine must be part of any peace talks with Russia, but the Ukrainian President Zelensky wasn't convinced that Russia wants peace.
This is not just madness. This is Russia's stance. A country that launches such attacks does not want peace. They don't want.
Meanwhile, Boris Johnson has backed Donald Trump's message to Europe, urging nations to man up and step up their support for Ukraine. Thousands of people have marched to the US Embassy in London in protest against Donald Trump's plans for Gaza. The protest came after a proposal by President Donald Trump earlier this month for the United States to consider taking ownership of the Gaza Strip. Mr. Trump suggested the US could redevelop the war-torn territory into the Riviera of the Middle East. The Met Police promised a major security operation to keep the groups apart and minimize disruption today. They imposed conditions under the Public Order Act, restricting routes, assembly areas, and start and finish times. In other news, a woman in her 40s has died after a shooting at a village in Kent on Valentine's Day. Kent police say she was shot at around 7 o'clock on Friday evening at a pub and died at the scene. A murder investigation is now underway, with police confirming the suspect is a man known to the victim. Officers have also found a vehicle and a firearm on the Dartford crossing linked to the incident. Elsewhere, the family of British nationals Craig and Lindsay Foreman are rallying to secure their safe return after the couple was detained in Iran. The pair, who were travelling across the world on motorbikes, were arrested in January, with Iranian state media reporting they face security charges. The Foreman's family described the situation as distressing and expressed their focus on ensuring their safety while working with authorities. The Foreign Office is in contact with Iranian officials and providing consular support. Now, 240 migrants have crossed the channel in small boats today. It comes as overnight one woman died when a boat capsized near the coast of France, while dozens of others were rescued. French Coast Guards confirmed they managed to rescue 69 people in the water near Calais, while one sadly died. 2 men have been charged after a man was attacked outside the Turkish consulate in London while burning a Quran. Footage on social media shows the victim on the ground as a knife-wielding attacker kicks him. 50-year-old Hamid Kuskan from Derby has been charged with a religiously aggravated public order offence, while Musa Kadri, who's 59, faces charges of actual bodily harm and possessing an offensive weapon. Kuskan is due in court today, while Kadri has been bailed until Monday. And world number 1 Yannick Sinner has been handed a 3-month ban from tennis after settling a doping case with the World Anti-Doping Agency. The Australian Open champion tested positive for the banned substance clostribol last year, but was found to have been inadvertently contaminated by his physiotherapist. Authorities had initially sought a ban of up to 2 years, but agreed to a reduced suspension after accepting Sinner had no intent to cheat. He will miss major tournaments in the US and Europe, but can return in May for the Italian Open. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Nana.
For the very latest GB TV program.
So join me here on France 24.
Nathalie Savaricas, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.
Welcome back to Around the World. I'm Jenny Shin. Our headlines. 3 Israeli hostages and 369 Palestinian prisoners are released in another exchange between Israel and Hamas, the 6th swap since the truce took effect in January. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance berates European leaders amid simmering tensions between the U.S. and its allies. Addressing the security conference in Munich, he said Europe's biggest threat is not China or Russia, but the threat from within. And the African Union Summit kicks off in Ethiopia with leaders holding talks on the conflicts in eastern Congo and Sudan. The DRC president absent amid the ongoing fighting between his government and M23 rebels in the country.
Good afternoon, it is 4 o'clock. This is Sky News Today with Kamali Melbourne. Your headlines. The Foreign Secretary reiterates he sees as Ukraine's path into NATO and warns against complacency if the war with Russia ends.
This is the front line, not just for Ukraine, but for Europe. We know too that even when we get to a negotiated peace, Putin will not go away.
Police in Kent say a woman has been shot dead at a pub near Sevenoaks. A British couple detained in Iran are named as their family calls for their safe return. Another 3 Israeli hostages freed by Hamas after mediators helped avert the collapse of the fragile ceasefire. In exchange, 369 Palestinians are released from Israeli prison. And why more turtles are appearing on the shores of the UK. What's being done to help? Well, the Foreign Secretary David Lammy has insisted the UK Good evening, I'm Bo Kok-in. These are the headlines. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has insisted that no decision should be taken on ending Russia's war without Kyiv and Europe, as the US pushes to open talks with Moscow. He made the remarks on the second day of the Munich Security Conference. He emphasized that a ceasefire can't be agreed on without real security guarantees or measures to keep Russia in check. Mr. Zelensky also rallied for Europe to band together to create its own armed forces, warning that Ukraine's army alone was not enough for security. Singapore Defense Minister Ng Hen is also in Germany for the Munich Security Conference. He says America's primacy has become the pole star of his foreign policy, even at the expense of bilateral and multilateral ties. Calling it a great disruption, he says the progress and well-being of the global commons will suffer in the absence of a leader to protect them. Dr. Ng was speaking at a leaders' round table. On the sidelines of the conference, he called on his German counterpart Boris Pistorius, and the two leaders reaffirmed the strong defense ties between both countries. Mr. Ng also had a meeting with his Italian counterpart Guido Crosetto. 3 more Israeli hostages have been released following a dispute over the terms of the Gaza ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. The 3 men are dual Israeli citizens aged 29 to 46. The release took place in Gaza's southern city of Khan Yunis. The men were brought out of the vehicle and onto a stage to give short speeches before being transferred to Red Cross officials. They're now in Israeli custody. Hundreds of Palestinian prisoners were then released from Israeli jails to be sent either to Gaza or to the occupied West Bank. The Palestinian Red Crescent says 4 of the freed were transferred to a hospital. A total of 369 of them was scheduled to be released on Saturday. It is the 6th hostage for prisoner swap since the start of the ceasefire in January. Reports say Thailand has deported 10 Chinese nationals linked to the alleged kidnapping of an actor who was rescued from a scam center in Myanmar. Thai police told AFP the suspects were part of a gang operating in Myawaddy, Myanmar. The 10 were flown out of Bangkok on Friday, escorted by Thai immigration police. They are said to have played various roles in their scams, such as managers, security guards, and call center operators. And that's the latest from the CNN newsroom.
Some white South Africans showed support for President Donald Trump on Saturday and gathered at the US Embassy in Pretoria to claim they are victims of racism by their own government. Hundreds of protesters held placards that read, "Thank God for President Trump," and displayed other messages criticizing what they see as racist laws.
We just want to say to America and to the West, despite the foreign policy decisions the South African government had taken in the past 2 decades, the West does still have a friend here in South Africa.
Many were from the Afrikaner community that Trump focused on in an executive order a week ago that cut aid and assistance to the black-led South Africa.
Literally placing policy and positioning South Africa as a divided nation, and in that in itself it corrupts in different levels. It brings the concept of peace and reconciliation.
The South African government has denied its new law is tied to race and says Trump's claims over the country has been full of misinformation and distortions.
Pope Francis was admitted at the hospital on Friday after he
race and says Trump's claims over the country has been full of misinformation and distortions.
Pope was admitted at the hospital on Friday after his week-long struggle with bronchitis took a turn for the worse, leading to treatment for a respiratory tract infection, according to the Vatican. This marks another. Besigye, a prominent Ugandan opposition leader, appeared in court on Friday, looking weak according to his supporters after one of his lawyers described him as critically ill. At 67, Besigye has been a significant challenger to President Yoweri Museveni, who has held power for nearly 40 years and has unsuccessfully contested 4 elections against him. Currently on trial for threatening national security, Besigye began a hunger strike on February 10th to protest his detention, as stated by his lawyer, Area